In today's video, we're looking at the civil rights movement of the 1960s. From lunch counter sit-ins to the freedom rides, from peaceful marches to moments of violence and deep tragedy, this era reshaped the moral landscape of the United States. We'll follow the movement's journey from nonviolent protest to militant resistance and examine how America responded through pain, courage, law, and loss. Let's get started. The 1960s brought enormous change to American domestic life, and nothing was more pressing or impactful than the civil rights movement. President John F. Kennedy, a Democrat, entered the White House hesitant to challenge conservative Southern Democrats on the issues of race. While he celebrated equality in principle, he didn't push the issue aggressively. In contrast, his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, was more personally committed to the cause. Black Americans, meanwhile, were united by a common goal: to win equality before the law and to dismantle the legacy of racism that had persisted for more than 3 centuries. Their determination would launch a wave of activism that would shake the foundations of American society. After the success of the Montgomery bus boycott in the 1950s, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s philosophy of nonviolent civil disobedience inspired a new generation. That momentum culminated in a bold act on February 1st, 1960, when four black college students, later known as the Greensboro Four, sat at a whites only counter at Woolworth's drugstore in North Carolina and demanded service. This seemingly small act of defiance sparked a wildfire. Within a week, sit ins had spread to 6 towns across the state, and within 2 months to 54 cities across 9 states. Sit-ins evolved into kneel-ins at segregated churches and wade-ins at public swimming pools. In response, student activists, both black and white, formed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC. Alongside King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference, they worked to broaden the civil rights movement and energize young Americans. By May of 1961, the Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE, launched the Freedom Rides. Black and white riders boarded buses to test a federal ruling that banned segregation in interstate bus and train terminals. Their journey took them deep into the South, from Virginia through the Carolinas, down to Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, refusing to adhere to the whites only policies. On May 14th, near Anniston, Alabama, white supremacists violently attacked the riders. One bus was driven off the road and set ablaze, with passengers beaten as they escaped. Later that night in Birmingham, police, under orders from Segregationist Police Commissioner Bull Connor, disappeared as another group of freedom riders was savagely beaten with bats and chains. Despite the brutality, the freedom rides continued into the fall. Among the jailed protesters was a young activist named John Lewis, who would later become a long serving U.S. congressman. President Kennedy, preoccupied with the Berlin crisis, urged the riders to call it off. He left it up to his brother Robert Kennedy to dispatch federal marshals to protect them. In 1963, the SCLC targeted Birmingham, Alabama, one of the most segregated cities in the country, for a large scale protest. Activists staged nil ins, sit ins, and marched to begin a voter registration drive. The goal was clear: fill the jails with protesters and force the city to negotiate. Bull Connor struck back. He obtained a court injunction banning protests and raised bail bond prices to deter arrests. Undeterred, Dr. King and others chose to defy the injunction. On April 12th, King and 50 others, including Ralph Abernathy, were arrested. While jailed, King penned his now famous Letter from Birmingham Jail. He defended civil disobedience, writing, "One who breaks an unjust law must do so openly, lovingly, and with a willingness to accept the penalty." He emphasized that only by creating a crisis could an unjust society be forced to confront moral truth. Despite King's words, momentum in Birmingham began to stall. So SCLC organizer James Bevel proposed a new and bold idea. Children would take up the cause. On May 2nd, 1963, in what would become known as the Children's Crusade, hundreds of black students, some as young as first graders, would walk out of their schools to protest. Seventh grader Gwendolyn Sanders helped lead the effort, even as principals tried to stop them. In response, Bull Connor ordered fire hoses turned on the children and police dogs unleashed. Images of the violence were splashed across newspapers around the world. Over 600 children were arrested, doubling the number of jailed protesters. And though desegregation in Birmingham came slowly, the world now viewed Dr. King as a hero, and national support for the civil rights movement grew dramatically. On August 28, 1963, the civil rights movement reached a historic peak. Over 200,000 Americans marched through Washington, D.C., singing "We Shall Overcome." At the Lincoln Memorial, Dr. King delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech.
Signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope for millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. We have all come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time. until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream.
Yeah.
It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. One day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight.
But 2 weeks later, that dream was shattered by tragedy. A bomb exploded at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, killing four young black girls: Addie Mae Collins, Carol Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley. All were between the ages of 11 and 14 years old. The four KKK members responsible were not prosecuted at the time. 3 months later, President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. His successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, surprised many by becoming a fierce advocate for civil rights. In July of 1964, Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It protected voting rights, desegregated public accommodations, and established a commission to ensure equal job opportunities. That same year, the 24th Amendment was ratified, banning the poll tax in federal elections. But in the South, resistance persisted. So in 1965, King launched a campaign to register the 3 million black Americans still denied the vote. In Selma, protesters were viciously attacked while attempting to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge on March 7th, later known as Bloody Sunday. With national support and federal protection, the marchers finally made it to Montgomery. In response, Johnson called on Congress to act. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 soon passed, ending literacy tests and authorizing federal oversight of voter registration. By the end of that year, 250,000 new black voters were registered. But legal progress did not translate into economic or social equality. Just days after the Voting Rights Act was signed, the Watts neighborhood in Los Angeles erupted into violent riots. The rebellion was fueled by continued discrimination in jobs, housing, and education. By the end, 35 were dead and damages exceeded $35 million. By 1966, frustration turned into a new rallying cry: Black Power. SNCC leader Stokely Carmichael embraced the movement, urging Black Americans to take control over their own political and economic futures. He later joined the militant Black Panther Party. At the same time, Malcolm X had become a leading voice for Black nationalism. After a pilgrimage to Mecca, he changed his stance, calling for a unified civil rights effort. But in February of 1965, he was assassinated in New York. By 1968, the movement entered a new stage. King began focusing on the deeper causes of urban poverty and inequality. In April, while supporting striking sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, he was assassinated. Riots erupted across the nation. Only months later, Robert F. Kennedy, JFK's brother and a presidential candidate, was also assassinated. In 1969, Black Panther leader Fred Hampton was also killed in an FBI raid while he was asleep. With the loss of key leaders and growing violence, the movement seemed at a crossroads. Legal equality had been achieved, but social justice remained elusive. The civil rights movement of the 1960s was one of the most profound moral reckonings in American history. Through the courage of children in Birmingham, the bloodshed in Selma, and the inspiring words of Martin Luther King Jr., America was forced to confront segregation. Yet, as the rise of Black power and urban unrest showed, the struggle for equality was far from over. Sit ins and freedom rides may have started the revolution, but they were only the beginning of a much larger fight for justice. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.